Okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'd ask the Secretary to please call the roll.
Regent Bartel.
Here.
Regent Bradley.
Here.
Regent Burmaster. Here. Regent Connolly-Kiesler.
Here.
Regent Crane.
Here.
Regent Keene.
Here.
Regent Davis.
Here.
Regent Falbo.
Here.
Regent Loftus. Regent Pruitt.
Here.
Regent Rosenzweig.
Here.
Regent Shields.
Here.
Regent Smith.
Here.
Regent Spector.
Here.
Regent Thomas.
Here.
Regent Vasquez.
Here.
Regent Walsh.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you very much. Well, I would first like to welcome Jose Vasquez, who was recently appointed by Governor Jim Doyle to be a member of the Board of Regents. Welcome, Jose. Jose is Chief Executive Officer of Felician-Sponsored Ministries in Milwaukee. He also served as Southeast District Director and Director of Urban Relations for UW Extension. So he brings a knowledge of the workings of the UW system. I understand he also brings a knowledge of working with President Riley from Extension days. Those are two very valuable traits to have. As some of you know, Regent Milt McPike tendered his resignation as a member of the Board of Regents to Governor Doyle on Tuesday for reasons of health. In his letter, Milt talked about his admiration for his colleagues on the Board of Regents and for President Riley and his capable staff, and also the chancellors and the campus staff. Milt could not be with us today because of those reasons of health, but we are very honored that his wife Sharon agreed to be with us today and participate in our tribute of Milt and all that he has accomplished in the field of education and also community leadership. I'd now like to call on Regent Elizabeth Burmaster to make some remarks and present a video and also a resolution of appreciation for Milt's leadership and his achievements. Libby?
Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. And a special welcome to Sharon McPike again, who is an outstanding educational leader in our state, one of our best reading specialists, and who is still working at Madison East High School. What a dynamic duo you and Milt have been in education. My understanding is that we're videotaping this. Is that right? So Milt can actually, yes, so that'll be nice. So Milt, I know that we all want to say to you, we are really going to miss you on the Regents. So our friend and my longtime colleague, Milt McPike, is a champion and truly a leader for public education in Wisconsin. He's been a regent for almost 4 years and for 28 years in the Madison Metropolitan School District. Thousands, literally thousands of Wisconsin citizens owe a great debt of gratitude to Milt. I know that I do. He was my principal at Madison East High School when I was 20-something, choral teacher and drama director there. And Milt was a tremendous mentor. And he was one of the most supportive principals in Madison at that time, and a leader for creativity and arts education in the curriculum. I was inspired by Milt to go into administration, and I did my administrative internship with principalship with him. A few years later, we were colleagues, leading two of Madison's, the two oldest and largest high schools in Madison, Madison East and Madison West. Milt was principal of Madison East for 23 years, from 1979 to 2002. and his leadership was truly transformational. His leadership reached across a racial divide, and it brought young people and their parents really together in creating a new vision for what a school culture could be. Through his own personal example, thousands of students really learned to overcome their fears about race, about gender, about disability. He taught them to overcome their fears by having an open heart and a loving soul. You know, Milt's been called a lot of things. He's been called a San Francisco 49er. He's been called coach. He's been called husband. He's been called father and grandfather. He was named State Principal of the Year by his peers. He won the Educator of the Year award from the Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce, and he was named one of 10 American heroes in education in the entire country by Reader's Digest in 1990. What a celebration. He's been named Man of the Year, an Unsung Hero, Humanitarian, and Regent. He is indeed all of these things. The East High School Fieldhouse is named in his honor, and the Milt McPike Achievement Awards annually recognize seniors graduating from Madison schools with a strong academic record, athletic performance, involvement in other school activities, and a positive attitude. They are awarded with a scholarship in his name for college. Hey, Milt, for this great man, this great giant of a man, no person or no issue has ever been too small for you. So in appreciation, we're going to show a video, Channel 3, which I think you will remember having seen. It's actually from about 1992, and it was at a time, again, when oh, here it is.
But it saved the students in John Murray. A few years ago, Sean was flunking out of school in trouble with the law. His turnaround started with East High Principal Milt McPike.
She asked me to a counseling like that at the time. You know, and he showed me all this stuff because I was football memorabilia and everything.
That gesture triggered something in Sean, a child who was grown up in a troubled home.
Everything changed. I was treated like I was really somebody that could really do it. You know, I was really when I was 15.
Sean's grade point average now, a 4.0.
I've seen so much success through kids who everybody else has given up on.
And that's an example for many of the kids. He reaches the diversity different because of your race, financial situation, or family life. The ones that don't fit in a traditional setting, you're kind of secretly safe.
Put your arms around them. You know, we look at it. The folks are warm fuzzy. Do you want warm fuzzy? Do I want warm fuzzy? Do I drop it all alone? You know? Yeah.
It's very nice. That captures you, Milt. So, Sharon, if you could come forward, we would love to present a resolution of appreciation for you to take to Milt. Whereas Milt McPike dedicated 4 years in service to the University of Wisconsin System Board of Regents from 2004 to 2008. And whereas Milt's tireless commitment to students and schools is evident in his lifelong efforts to broaden educational access, to encourage parental involvement, to boost students' academic success, to confront the challenges faced by students of color. And whereas through more than 2 decades of service as the principal of Madison's East High School, Milt inspired generations of students to enrich their lives through education, and he led the school to achieve national recognition as a presidential school of excellence. And whereas his charismatic leadership earned Milt recognition as a Reader's Digest American Hero in Education, the NAACP's Unsung Hero, and Madison Magazine's Man of the Year, among many other honors. And whereas People of all ages have benefited from Milt's work as a community builder, including his involvement with the Wisconsin Juvenile Justice Department, the Dane County Youth Commission, and many other service organizations and foundations. And whereas Milt served admirably as vice chair of the Physical Planning and Funding Committee, never complaining about the room, helping to ensure that 170,000 UW system students would benefit from facilities that provide effective, safe learning and living environments. And whereas, through service on 2 UW Chancellor Selection Committees, Milt helped to identify talented leaders to lead our institutions to even greater future success. Be it therefore resolved that the Board of Regents of the UW system hereby offer thanks and commendation to Milt McPike for his many life achievements and for his service as a member of this board.
Thank you very much, Sharon. We appreciate it. Thanks, Libby. I don't remember what the issue was, but I was sitting where Regent Keene was sitting, and Milt was sitting where Regent Falbo was sitting, and I just leaned over and I said, "This is so complicated." I can't remember what the topic was. And Milt reached over with one of those great big hands that used to catch those footballs in the NFL, and he said, "It isn't complicated. It's all about the students, man. It's all about the students." Well, you received the minutes from the February 7th and 8th meeting. A corrected page 8 for the February 8 minutes has been included in your folders. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? If not, may I have a motion to approve them as corrected? Second? Any discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Well, this is the first of our 2 one-day meetings that we approved last year, where we have the luxury of sitting back and trying to grapple with a couple of big picture issues. Last year we said it would be nice to have a couple of opportunities where we could have a few hours dedicated to getting information and having an opportunity to hear presentations and then discuss without the pressure of having to make a decision. So today we have that opportunity for 2 very important issues, the first of which is the role of the UW colleges in the UW system. So I'm going to ask President Riley to begin the discussion. There will be other people who will be providing us information. You have had the information in your materials. And then we will have the ability to discuss, ask President Riley and others questions, and just try to come up with a sense of the board. Following today's discussion, President Riley will take our comments and develop recommendations that he would make to us probably at our April meeting. So we don't have to decide anything today. We can sit back, listen, think, share our thoughts, and give some reference to President Riley so he can develop final recommendations to us to be considered at a later time. So with that, President Riley, take it away.
Thank you, President Bradley. Good morning and welcome, everybody. Just to build on a few thoughts that Mark just mentioned before we get into the two specific topics for the day, this really does respond, I think, to a request from the board to have a little more time in depth to look at some major issues which do require you to make significant decisions in the near run, but not today. So we have tried to structure the day in a way that responded to what you wanted, and this is part of our new scheme of Regent meetings and goes back really to probably a conference call that Eileen and then Regent Roger Axtell and I had with some of the Association of Governing Board folks about how meetings were being structured increasingly for boards like this across the country, and brought some ideas back to this board. At that point, President Walsh was reluctant to incorporate any of the ideas, but now President Bradley has done so. We characterize that as progress.
That's because he's not a Madison East graduate.
That's clear. So our next meeting of this type, just to look ahead a little bit on that new schedule, is in November. So we might be thinking a little bit as we go forward what topics you want to have us focus on in that one-day policy level discussion meeting then. And of course, we'll solicit your ideas about that as we get closer to the November meeting. But today, to emphasize another point Mark made, I am not bringing you any resolutions. I am not bringing you any recommendations at all. Instead, we hope to have a high-level, informed policy discussion on two major issues, the role of the UW colleges and tuition and financial aid policy. I see this meeting today as a continuation of our Advantage Wisconsin strategic planning process, and you'll remember that includes the 7 core strategies and the strategic framework that we developed in that process, each of which had its own think tank. You recall the think tanks, and the resulting 10 initial growth agenda action steps that we reviewed with you at your last meeting, and that you approved and told us to go about the business of implementing. And just a quick aside, so you don't think we've forgotten about that, work has begun, in fact, to translate those big ideas that we talked with you about last month in the growth agenda action steps into tangible actions and implementations. The provosts, the chief business officers are working on preliminary approaches for involving key faculty and staff from across the system on implementation plans. Best practices that relate to some of these 10 growth agenda action items on our campuses are being identified, ones that are out there already as models for several of the action steps for moving them along. Concrete actions already taken place with some of them, for instance, extending the UW-Madison Connections program to UW Green Bay, and this is not quite ripe yet, but we may have another one of our comprehensive campuses that wants to join that Connections program as well. We'll be back in April with a fuller progress report on those 10 action steps for you, and I'll talk with Region President Bradley between now and April about opportunities for Regents to get involved with the implementation teams on that work. But back to today. The committees that produced the 2 reports that are before us today on the UW colleges and on tuition and financial aid, really we can think of as think tanks number 8 and 9. We had the 7 think tanks we talked about last week and their reports resulting in those action steps. In my mind, this is, as I said, a continuation of that process, and the 2 groups that worked were thinking hard about these 2 big issues as part of our overall strategic planning process. And we tried to structure this, by the way, sequentially so that we could have the broad strategic planning discussion last month and then come to these 2 specific issues under that umbrella with you this month. I think the 2 reports are in a little different format from that we often use in higher ed. You know, in my experience, what tends to happen is the president, the chancellor, the regents impanel a group and ask them to come forward with some recommendations about a particular area where there are questions or issues. And we have a lot of very bright people in the system. We have a lot of very committed, passionate people in the system with lots of experience in the areas we ask them to work on, and tend to come forward then with a set of recommendations. And what are the 5 things that the board should do? Number 1, number 2, number 3, in that order. What we did it was a little different this time around, and I think the results are different. I think these reports really do present for your thought policy options on both of the topics, along with considerations and implications and cross-fertilizations and contraindications, to borrow a medical term, and plain old pros and cons for each of the options in both of these areas. And we asked our colleagues who worked on these reports to deliver them in that format because we believe that format would best support the kind of broad-ranging policy discussion that we want to have today. Let's see if that worked after the discussion today. We hope, too, that these reports will aid the Regents, and the rest of us, for that matter, in more fully understanding and appreciating the context for decision-making in these 2 vital areas, so that you do not feel as if you're being asked to make a series of disconnected, ad hoc decisions, the cumulative effects of which are a black hole to you. We don't want you to feel that way. I think these reports are well done with those purposes in mind, and I want to thank all the colleagues who worked on them and led them, including, by the way, 2 of your colleagues, Regents Crane and Falbo, who are on the Tuition and Financial Aid Policy Group. Special thanks to Debbie Durkin and Frida Harris and Sharon Wilhelm and Ron Singer, who played leadership roles on these 2 committees. So today I hope to listen mostly, and as Mark said, based on what I hear today and reflection and discussion between now and April, I intend to come back to you at the April meeting with some recommendations on how I think we should move forward with regard to the role of the colleges in tuition and financial aid policy. Senior Vice President Martin will introduce the discussion of the UW colleges, and Senior Vice President Mash will do the same after lunch on the tuition and financial aid conversation. Just so you know, we have vetted these 2 reports with the chancellors and the provosts, and they are certainly available, as always, to enrich the dialogue about them today, and we hope that we'll be able to draw them into it. So I'll turn the floor over to Rebecca now with one concluding thought, and that is this, that the litmus test for whatever positions or actions we eventually decide to take on these 2 matters should be, will they advance one or more of the goals of the growth agenda for Wisconsin? Will what we do coming out of today's session help to produce more high-quality graduates, attract more college-educated people to Wisconsin, and grow high-paying jobs that will employ both? That, I suggest, is a litmus test for us. And with that, Rebecca, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Let me start with a little background. About a year ago, you were asked to consider an associate degree in the liberal arts at one of our Wisconsin technical colleges. And at that time, many of you asked about what impact will this have on the UW colleges. At about the same time, Chancellor Wilson had underway a broad-based commission to consider the future of the UW colleges. And from the report of this group, he selected 5 recommendations for further exploration and put together internal task forces to look into the possibilities. In concert with that work, President Riley charged a system-wide committee to reflect on the policy implications of these potential areas from a statewide and system-wide perspective. And the report from this committee is in the packet that you received for the meeting. Today, David Wilson will share his perspective on these ideas now that his task forces have reported. And you will note that the 5 areas for potential development are moving forward at different paces, with 2 of them under serious consideration at this point. Following David's report, Ron Singer will outline the considerations identified by the system-wide committee in these 2 areas. But first, let me make a few comments for you to bear in mind as you listen to these brief reports. And we are really going to try to keep them as brief as we can. We want to get the information in front of you, but we also want to leave most of the time allotted for your discussion. At a broad level, I believe there are 2 ways to look at these proposals from the UW colleges, in particular the one for limited baccalaureate degree authority. One way would be to see this as a major change in their mission. Another way would be to look at this as the natural extension of their mission moving into a new arena, and so you might want to think about that. Clearly, the UW colleges play an essential role in our access and affordability agenda for Wisconsin. They have very special relationships with many of our communities, and they contribute in important ways to the growth agenda. One potential contribution might be a new pathway degree. And we should ask, as we consider that, is this the right approach? Is this a role for the UW colleges? Can we demonstrate the need? How might this fit into the existing array of degree opportunities in our state? We will not attempt to answer those questions today, but rather begin a conversation about the possibilities and their potential impacts. Chancellor Wilson.
By the way, I'd like to just inform everybody that Regent Loftus is now joining us by phone. Tom, can you hear us?
Yes.
Thank you.
Let me start by saying good morning to everyone. Thank you very much, Rebecca. And on behalf of my colleagues in the UW colleges, our faculty, our staff, our students, on behalf of our deans and directors in the colleges and in Extension, I'm really excited to come today and talk with you about two strategies that we would like to embrace going forward to advance the goals of the growth agenda. In terms of this presentation, I would think that it's organized around two particular approaches. The first is I just want to spend a little time giving you a little background on the UW colleges. Who are we? And then a little bit about what we think we do very, very well in terms of instruction. And then the second part of the presentation will talk a bit about these two strategies that we would like to embrace going forward to advance the goals of the growth agenda. And so with that in mind, let's delve into the first part. Who are we? The UW colleges is, and it is, we think of the institution as a singular institution. And so the UW colleges is one institution in 13 places. We have one registrar, we have one English department, we have one history department, we have one political science department spread over 13 places. There's not an English department on each campus or a history department on each campus. We have as our mission that of providing the freshman, sophomore liberal arts foundation for a baccalaureate degree, and we try and do that in a way that is accessible and affordable. And so because we are organized as one singular institution, we like to think that we have been enormously efficient in actually carrying out this mission of providing freshman, sophomore instruction in the liberal arts. We have a very diverse student population in the colleges. As of fall 2007, we eclipsed 13,000 students in terms of our head count. This is the largest number of students ever to enroll in the colleges. About 8,000 of those students are what we call freshmen. And a third of our students are, in terms of the new freshmen, we have the third largest number of new freshmen in the UW system. UW Madison number 1, UW Milwaukee number 2, and we are number 3. About 98% of our students are commuting students. We do have 2 residential facilities, one at Marathon County and one at Richland County. And taken together, those facilities house about 250 students, but by and large, the UW colleges are commuter campuses. More than 60% of our students work more than 20 hours a week, if you will. But then when you peel that back, more than 30% of our students actually work more than 30 hours a week. That really speaks to the adult students that are taking advantage of the UW college's presence. They are working, they have families, and they basically have to work in order to pay to come back to school, and that's why you're seeing a large percent of the students in the colleges actually working more than perhaps the student at one of our comprehensive campuses might work. We received a large number of first-generation college-going students, and as a result of that, over half of our students, the traditional students, receive financial aid, and about 33% of our students are adult place-bound students. We have traditionally led the UW system in enrolling adult students across the state. And so about 33% of that number that I spoke about earlier, the 13,000 head count, would be students who are 22 years of age and older. Also, it is worth pointing out here that about 1/3 of the students who come to the UW colleges cannot gain access to the UW through any other venue. In essence, we are an open admissions institution. We admit nearly 99% of all students who apply to us. Now, we think we do a very, very good job in terms of adding value to what those students bring to us, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when we go along in terms of how the students perform when they leave the UW colleges. But we are, by and large, an open admissions institution. Here are some things that we do well. I can really kind of put a laundry list here, but for the sake of time, let me just point out a couple of these. We provide the local access to the UW for a large sector of the population, if you will. And more than 20% of the counties in the state of Wisconsin, those high school students coming out of high school as seniors accessing the UW, access the UW through the UW colleges as their primary access point to a UW college education. We also prepare students very well for success at the baccalaureate level. If you go back to that statistic that I spouted out earlier about being an open admissions institution, well, when those students come to us and they stay for 2 years and they transfer on to a comprehensive institution, we have the highest graduation rate of any transfer students in the UW system at nearly 80%. And so our faculty actually is doing a phenomenal job of taking many students where they are and elevating them to where they need to be in order to be successful at the baccalaureate degree level. We think we do this because we have a faculty that is well equipped. 80% of our faculty have the terminal degree, the highest degree in their field. And we recruit from really the same pool of faculty as many of our comprehensive institutions. And we're able to do that simply because we are a liberal arts institution. And if you look at the production of PhDs in the liberal arts, it's much, much higher than it would be in the sciences and engineering. And so therefore, when we have an opening on our campus in English or history, we get hundreds of applications for that particular position. And so therefore, we are able to recruit professors who have degrees from some of the best institutions in the country. We also think that because of the class size in the colleges, that students can come to us with some deficits, and our faculty are able to have almost one-on-one, one-on-three, one-on-four kinds of relationships with them. And because of this close faculty-student relationship, we think that is something that we do well in order to add value to the student experience. The UW colleges over time have also been leaders in innovation, particularly in instructional innovation. And just want to point out a couple of these. Several years ago, actually there was a need expressed in the local communities for more baccalaureate degree completion programs on our campuses. This is something that pretty much happened under the radar, if you will. It was not a part of a strategic planning process, but it was really the result of very innovative deans and very innovative central administrators understanding what the need was and actually responding to that need. And as a result of that, today we have nearly 70 baccalaureate degree and associate degree completion programs in collaboration with other comprehensive institutions in our technical colleges, if you will. We are the only institution in the UW system to have the freshman-sophomore curriculum in liberal arts totally online. And we think that is an example of how innovative we have been, once again, in understanding the market needs and responding to those needs. So with that in mind, when I came on board and we were talking about, even a couple of years ago, what should be the future role of the UW colleges, it was at that point that I commissioned, put in place a commission, a Blue Ribbon Commission, co-chaired by former Regent Roger Axtell and John Torinas from Serigraph in West Bend, and basically charged that commission with looking at a variety of issues and questions. And I just basically ferreted out from that charge these 3 questions in particular. So I asked the commission these 3 questions. How can the colleges better serve the needs of adult place-bound students in their local communities and the state? How can the colleges capitalize on their uniqueness? And should the colleges be approved to offer this selective baccalaureate degree? Those were 3 very pointed questions put before the commission. Well, the commission came forward with 20 recommendations, and as Rebecca said, we then established a number of task forces within the institution to go forward and further explore some of those recommendations. The 2 that we explored in greater detail was whether there was an opportunity for the colleges, given our access mission, to look around the state and provide more opportunities for adult place-bound students to access us than in the 13 locations where we were, and then the restricted baccalaureate degree authority. The task forces came back and basically said that there are 2 areas where we think the colleges actually should embrace in order to achieve the goals of the growth agenda. The first was that we should look at new outreach efforts in northern Wisconsin, and the second that came from the task force was that the colleges be granted the authority to offer this restricted baccalaureate degree. Let's talk just a little bit about northern Wisconsin, and then I get to the BAAS. Northern Wisconsin, the area that we looked at, is comprised of 17 counties across the north. 7% of the state's population is living in those 17 counties, roughly about 412,000 individuals. They're spread out all across the north. That region is an aging region. There are pockets of prosperity, just a few pockets of prosperity, but by and large, 11% of that population now is living in poverty. And we also looked at baccalaureate degree attainment in that region of 17 counties. And what we discovered is that in terms of regions in the state, that is one of the lowest, if not the lowest region in terms of baccalaureate degree attainment. 14% of individuals 18 to 44 have a baccalaureate degree, compared with 25% in the entire state. And by the way, in our city of Milwaukee, I think, Carlos, is about 19%. And so this just kind of puts this in perspective in terms of the baccalaureate degree attainment across the state. Also, a sizable portion of the individuals in those 17 counties pretty much said to us that they would like to return to college to get either an associate or a bachelor's degree if, for example, it were convenient and affordable for them to do so. And so we commissioned 3 studies here. We commissioned an empirical study. We held 8 World Cafe or focus group conversations in 8 of the counties across the north. And then we also conducted a survey involving 600 individuals across the north. And then we did a demographic profile of each of the counties, really trying to dig out what is the need here and how this need could be met. Well, the report came forward. It's about 2 inches thick, as a matter of fact. But it said, look, we think there's a need in northern Wisconsin in these 6 or 7 areas here. Ladysmith, Amory, Ashland, Eagle River, Florence, Crandon, and Merrill, if you will. And so as we begin to think about that, and we are just now in the thinking stages about that, as we move forward to ferret this out a bit more, the plan going forward would be that whatever we did in northern Wisconsin, it would involve the colleges programming existing facilities, perhaps, going into high schools and delivering courses, or even in the county courthouse where we have a UW Extension presence. And so it is important to note here that we are not talking about any new campus on the part of the UW colleges, any new brick and mortar operation on the part of the colleges, that we are, we think, now nimble enough and agile enough to look at a need like this and then to begin to respond to that need in very innovative and creative ways. We would also look at responding to that need in collaboration with Nicolay, in collaboration with UW Superior, and basically would initiate the conversation and the dialogue around how to actually go into that area and not duplicate what is currently on the ground, but to bring degree completion opportunities to an area that is not currently being well served. So let me move to the restricted baccalaureate degree authority. Just a little bit about the need, and then a bit about what such a degree at the 35,000-foot level might actually entail. This is a slide that I think some of you have seen. I won't spend a whole lot of time on this, but when Dennis Jones gave his presentation to the board, I believe at the June meeting that we held in Milwaukee, he pretty much said, look, I understand the growth agenda goals, and if one of your goals is to produce more baccalaureate degrees, then you need to look at where the associate degree holders are in the state, if indeed that is one of your target areas. And so what this shows is that the green areas here on the map, that's where we have an abundance of individuals with associate degrees already, who are not transferring on to our comprehensive institutions, who are not going to the private institutions to get their baccalaureates. They have those associate degrees, and they are in these regions, and they're in areas where many of our colleges are located, which means that we're doing a very good job, and the technical colleges as well, of producing individuals with associate degrees, but they're not going on to get baccalaureate degrees. That's pretty much what this slide indicates here. This is another slide that Dennis Jones actually shared. He said, you know, if you were to look at the top performing countries now across the globe in terms of the investments they're making in higher ed, and extend that over 17 years, that the state of Wisconsin, in order to catch those countries, would need to produce another 1.2 million baccalaureate degrees in this age group here over the next 17 years. And so within this age group right now, we have roughly about 430,000 individuals who are holding baccalaureate degrees. These numbers are from Dennis Jones. And so if then we have this 41% as our goal, we would need over the next 17 years to produce an additional 788,000 degrees at the baccalaureate level. What that would translate into in terms of additional baccalaureate degrees needed in the state would be roughly about 10,000 more a year. And so if you, by the argument that Dennis Jones actually proffered at the June board meeting, it means that if we have this 41% as a goal, then we would need to produce roughly about 10,000 more baccalaureate degrees each year over the next 17 years to get there. And so with that in mind, our faculty and staff have been hard at work over the last several months to look at how we could take advantage of what the colleges as an institution is doing uncommonly well now. And we are proposing that we move forward and begin to plan for a Bachelor's of Applied Arts and Sciences degree, a degree that would focus its learning outcomes on what the workforce is telling us around the state that it is looking for now in the adult place-bound student with a baccalaureate degree. And we have had numerous conversations with various employers around the state, and this basically is, the degree is being built around what we are hearing. So it would have three major components to it. Once again, at the very, very high level, 35,000-foot level. The first component would be that critical, creative thinking, quantitative reasoning, communication skills component. For those of you who've been involved with the LEAP initiative and the AAC&U principles, this is pretty much getting at what is being told to us nationally that we need to pay a little bit more attention to in order to produce the graduate of the 21st century. But this component would focus on information literacy, problem-solving skills, and what employers from northern Wisconsin to western Wisconsin to southeastern Wisconsin have told us is that it is very, very important for these individuals, when they get these degrees, to be able to work effectively in teams. And so that would comprise component number one. Component number two, we've also heard, that it is critically important for individuals to understand the world in which they live. And any degree of this sort that is not paying a lot of attention to global perspectives is not going to serve the needs of our state well, or certainly the needs of employers that we surveyed. And so this particular component would be one where we would imbue students with the ability to view problems from multiple perspectives and build an awareness and sensitivity to diversity issues across the globe. We also would encourage our students to learn a new language and to become a bit more immersed in another culture in order to understand that culture, and also would provide opportunities for even our adult place-bound students to engage in travel and some limited study abroad opportunities. The third component of this degree would be what we call the application of knowledge to real-world experience. And we will come at this primarily through three ways. The first is through credit for prior learning. And credit for prior learning, I have to point out, is different from credit for life experiences. That we will work with our faculty to assess whether adult place-bound students have engaged in the type of learning along the way that will qualify for college courses, college credits, and if so, how many credits. So if we apply those credits to that prior learning, an individual can get through the program actually much faster. This particular component would have a service learning and internship component to it. This would take advantage of our relationship, the college's relationship with the local cooperative extension office in the county. And as a student is taking a class, that student then could work through the local cooperative extension office in the local county, actually applying what they're learning in the classroom. And this particular component would have a capstone part to it, what we call an integrative and culminating learning experience in the senior year. This could be very well one course, a 6-credit-hour course or an 8-credit-hour course, where students would be asked to bring all of the things that they've learned in this program over the previous years to this one final semester where they would apply that to some kind of practical problem in the local area and actually learn and contribute back to the community in the process. And so what are we seeking then? We are seeking restricted baccalaureate degree authority, restricted, to offer just this one baccalaureate degree, just the one baccalaureate degree. The degree that we're talking about, this is not an upside-down degree. It is not a degree that is discipline-specific. It's not a BS in any of the disciplines, English, math, history, not that. It will not be duplicative of any baccalaureate degree in the UW system that's offered by the four-year institutions, and it is not our intent or desire with this degree to become a comprehensive institution. That's not the path that we are seeking here at all. As a matter of fact, we are proposing a mission change to reflect this restricted baccalaureate degree authority only to offer this one BAAS degree. This new mission would certainly enable us to retain what we do well and we are excited about doing well, which is our transfer mission. We are not abdicating our transfer mission. Our faculty is recruited for the most part to teach the freshman sophomore courses. They enjoy doing that. And we think that 95% of our students will continue to transfer to our comprehensive institutions to get those discipline degrees that they seek when they come to us. And we are not abdicating our commitment to the Liberal Arts Foundation, because once again, we think we do that uncommonly well, and we would like to go forward and build on that, if you will. And so in bringing this to a close, we think we are uniquely poised to offer this BAAS degree for a variety of reasons. I won't go through all of these, but we have a presence in every county in the state, given now the integration of the UW colleges and UW Extension. And as a result of that presence, UW Extension has a storied history of working with adults all over the state, and we want to take advantage of that in the colleges. We also feel we are poised to offer the BAAS because of what I said about our faculty. We recruit well-qualified faculty. Those faculty members are prepared to teach upper division courses. When we recruit them, we say to them, we don't want you to develop these courses, and so they don't develop the courses, and they only teach them the freshman and sophomore courses that we ask them to teach. And, of course, we feel that we are poised to offer this degree because of our history in the delivery of courses online, and we would anticipate that at least the way we would structure the degree will be a hybrid format. Some courses will be online, some courses would be face-to-face. In closing, there's a great deal of excitement, actually, that's been generated around what I am proposing. When I came to you in February of 2006, I said that any proposal that I came forward with as Chancellor of the Colleges and Extension would be appropriately vetted. And that's what we've done with this one, given the kind of support that we wanted to build internally to see if this was indeed something that was supported by our institution and by individuals who are supportive of our institution. And so this particular proposal that we are offering today has been unanimously endorsed by the UW College's faculty, by the Senate, by employers statewide, unanimously endorsed by the deans. All of the county executives with whom I've met have issued letters of support. I can share those letters with you. It's been endorsed by a number of elected officials. The non-traditional students on our campus are very excited about the possibility now that they might have a place to go to get a degree of high quality to enable them to move up in their places of employment. Numerous employers in the areas where our campuses are located have sent us letters saying, I have 15 employees that I'm ready to send to this program tomorrow and pay their tuition, if you will. And when they complete the program, there will be opportunities for them to move up in the local place of employment. Also, we've received endorsements from economic development councils, from our board of visitors, and also from the state association directors. So we are very excited about the strategies that we are bringing forward, and I will be more than happy to respond to any questions you have. We have numerous deans here from our campuses and other senior administrators as well who would certainly be available to chime in the discussion should that opportunity present itself. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Chancellor Wilson. Are there any other presenters?
Yes, before we take questions, I'd like to ask Ron Singer just to outline for you the considerations that the system-wide group came up with that would need to be addressed if we were to consider, in particular, this baccalaureate degree.
Good morning, and thank you. As President Riley indicated in October of last year, he charged a UW Colleges committee to take a system-wide look at what was at that time 5 strategies being considered by the UW Colleges task forces. The composition of the committee included representatives from UW Colleges, from UW Extension, from our other UW institutions, and from system administration. And of the 11 members, 3 were provosts, 2 were chief business officers, and I believe just about all of them are in the rooms. They can also perhaps respond to questions that you may have about our work. The role of the committee was to outline the pros and cons relating to 5 strategies that were being considered by UW Colleges task forces at the time. And I've noted in bold the 2 that Chancellor Wilson has discussed today and that I will focus on in terms of the considerations that we identified. The offering of baccalaureate degree programs or the restricted authority to offer the Bachelor's of Applied Arts and Sciences, and the service to the Northern Wisconsin region. It was not our role, as it is not yours today, to make any decisions or to make any recommendations or to respond to specific proposals since they were not yet formulated, but rather to outline and to create a framework for the decision-making that would have to take place as proposals did come forward. And over the course of our deliberations, we were provided with a bit more context for these, what were then very general ideas to assist us in our work. Again, the subject of today's discussion are the two programs, and I'll start with the one that Chancellor Wilson started with, the Northern Wisconsin Initiative. At the time, this was described to us as a process which would determine needs of adult students in the Northern Wisconsin area, which was described, I think, as the map indicated, primarily the area north of Highway 8. And that would be followed by a determination of how and where such needs could be addressed. And Chancellor Wilson has shared with you this morning some of the results of the work that they've done, certainly in identifying the needs. And to address those needs in a flexible and economic way, and he also was related to that. Now, the considerations that the committee felt were important in terms of addressing a proposal relating to serving this region were, first of all, to examine the target audience or audiences. What is the unmet need? What unmet need needs to be served? What audience in that region currently is not being served that needs to be served? Consideration of other institutions, and this would be both UW institutions, but also the technical colleges and the private institutions. In terms of the UW institutions, the impact of additional service in that area on other institutions and on the students that they serve. Would it enhance transfers? Would it result, or could it result in shifting of students from existing institutions to programs that might be offered in that region? What collaborative opportunities, and Chancellor Wilson touched on this as well, might be available with respect to existing UW institutions in that area? As far as the technical colleges and the private institutions are concerned, what role can they play, or are they currently playing in serving students in this region? As far as political considerations, this is one region that has been identified as an area of need. Are there other regions that may likewise feel in need of additional presence on the part of the colleges or the UW system more generally? And if so, how would we prioritize and balance needs that might exist in other parts of the state? The impact on economic and workforce development in that region. How would these additional educational opportunities which would be afforded in this area impact the area's economic and workforce development? Is there regional need for more highly educated citizens that would be served? Would a more highly educated population spur economic growth in that area? So these are again, the general considerations that the committee identified that would have to be looked at, that we would recommend be examined as proposals came forward, and that would be addressed as proposals came forward. Let me turn to the second proposal, which is the offering of the restricted baccalaureate degree. Again, in terms of the context that the committee had for this proposal at the time we started our deliberation, this would be restricted authority to offer what is now being described as a Bachelor's of Applied Arts and Sciences, that it would be targeted to an area of documented need, primarily place-bound adults, underserved students, and that it would utilize the strengths of the UW college's faculty. As far as the considerations that we identified that we felt should be addressed as such a proposal, or when such a proposal came forward, I might first mention that as those of you who are or have been a part of the Education Committee, we have a process for approving all new academic programs, and that process includes a number of the factors that are listed here, and I think our work was really to look at those factors and apply them to this particular situation, factors such as demand, need, duplication, collaboration, and so forth. But first of all, the broad area of access. What's the target audience, or what would be the target audience for this degree, and who would be served? Are there any concerns that we need have about potential duplication? Are these students currently being served, or could they be currently could they be served through existing degree programs, and what kinds of program delivery methods would be anticipated in order to reach a population of potential students who are currently not accessing our programs. What collaboration opportunities exist to serve these students that aren't being served? Collaboration opportunities with our comprehensives and our other four-year institutions. Can those needs be served through collaborative efforts? The fit of this particular proposal for a baccalaureate degree with other proposals that might come forward, and let me mention the Northern Wisconsin Initiative in particular. Their potential, we felt, potential compounding effects of perhaps coming forward with two separate strategies that could be positive or negative. In the case of Northern Wisconsin, if the baccalaureate degree were offered in Northern Wisconsin, putting those two strategies together, we'd have to look at the implication of offering that baccalaureate degree in Northern Wisconsin in terms of the institutions currently in that area and the opportunities for collaboration with them and the students that they're serving. So it's not, we felt that it was important not just to look at these strategies in isolation, but in combination, at least in certain cases. The question of that Chancellor Wilson has addressed, and I think probably a central question in this case, and that is the fit of this proposal with the mission of UW colleges and with our other UW institutions. The question of resources. How would the resources needed to provide this degree impact the UW colleges in particular and the UW system more generally? The potential to serve that this program might have to serve Wisconsin Technical College students as a bachelor's degree completion program. And finally, the impact on transfers, current transfers from the UW colleges to other UW institutions. If the opportunity is presented to continue on with a baccalaureate degree, what impact might that have on our other UW institutions and on the transfers they currently get from the UW colleges? Let me conclude by saying that, as President Riley indicated, all of this deliberation of the committee was done in the context of the growth agenda and answering the question, how might these initiatives contribute to the growth agenda, meet the needs of students who are currently not being served, and doing that in a way that leverages the strengths of the UW system to meet both student and state needs. I would like to finally thank the colleagues of mine that participated on this committee for their work and their participation and for what was a very constructive and respectful process that looked at a big picture question, and I think and hopefully provided you with some useful guidance and a useful framework for the decisions that you'll have to make moving forward. So thank you very much.
Okay, I think at this point, we'd just like to open this up for questions and discussion.
You know, maybe to make this easier, since I think most of the questions would be handled by staff, would you mind being the person to whom the questions would be directed? I think it'd just be easier.
As long as I don't have to answer them. Start right over here. Regent Rosenzweig, and then we'll go down.
Sure.
Well, I think that some of the possibilities are intriguing, and so I want to say that. And particularly, I was interested in the enhanced baccalaureate degree possibility, and who would be the target audience. And the use of the word restricted came up again and again, and I'm kind of curious, what do you think that targeted restricted audience would be?
I think that let me just try and then see if Chancellor Wilson wants to elaborate. My sense is that restricted is intended to mean there will only be this one degree. It's not giving the UW colleges the baccalaureate degree authority that our comprehensives have, for example, to offer an array of baccalaureate degrees, but rather just one degree.
Okay,
I think
so
the restrictive nature is about the degree itself, not about necessarily the audience.
The target audience.
The target audience. Although there is a specific target audience in mind in the development of this curriculum.
Can I just follow up on that? There was a discussion in the press about who this target would be, and the target seemed to be those individuals who are currently enrolled in the 2-year programs throughout the state, and that this expanded one degree would be available to those students, but only those students. And I guess as I was thinking about this, the question might occur that in, let's say, Marathon County, that there's a technical college there which may have students that have completed an associate degree. Would those students be natural targets for that restricted baccalaureate opportunity?
I think maybe Chancellor Wilson could shed some light on this.
Regent Wilson's correct. The target audience would certainly be those students that are adult place-bound students that are currently enrolled in the UW colleges who are getting their associate degrees and who are not transferring on to the comprehensives. Those associate degree holders who are residing in the local communities where the campuses are located, who perhaps got their degrees some time ago but have no other options to pursue a baccalaureate, and those students who are coming out of our technical colleges who actually have the associate degree and would like this particular degree as well. So there will be no limitation placed on the adult place-bound student that we are actually going after.
And just to be clear, you are going after the adult place-bound student, and that would be the focus of, so it didn't matter where those students had gotten their associate degree or did not complete their degree.
Yes, we're going after the adult place-bound students. This is not a degree that we are targeting for our traditional student population, the 18 to 22-year-olds, who are coming to us with the express purpose of staying 1 year or 2 years, getting their associate degree and going on to Madison or Milwaukee or Oshkosh or Green Bay or other institutions. So this degree is not being designed with that population in mind, which is why I said that we are not vacating our transfer mission. That is going to be core of what we do going forward.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome.
Regent Smith.
I'm excited, like Peggy was saying, I'm excited by some of the possibilities here that you've come up with, Chancellor Wilson. I appreciate all the work that's gone into this. Let me just, I'm a little as to whether some of these considerations that are listed in the report, which are certainly things to consider as we go forward, whether some of those have been looked at or not, or are they going to be looked at when an actual proposal comes forward. For example, and just maybe you can give me up to date, I'd want to be interested obviously in the cost. Before I'd want to go looking at this, I'd want to be A, interested in the cost. B, how many students do you think are going to be, talking about the degree that we're talking about, how many students do we think are going to be taking advantage of this degree? And 3, what impact would it have, if any, on our other comprehensives? Has this sort of analysis taken place yet, or will it as a proposal potentially comes forward?
That sort of analysis, Regent Smith, will take place once we get the green light to move forward and further plan the degree itself. As Ron indicated, there is a process in place within the UW system that we would need to develop a proposal and then send it through our internal process. And that process would involve looking at issues of resources. It would involve addressing the issue of what impact this degree would have on our comprehensive institutions. And so that has not been addressed yet because we are presenting this to you now at a very, very high level, and many of the details have not been worked out. But that those details would have to be addressed in the final proposal that we put forward, and it certainly is our intent to do so. You saw Ron's presentation where he talked about resources, he talked about the impact of this on the comprehensives. Now, in response to your question about, well, how many students might this actually affect, once again, I could not answer that in a definitive way. The way I would come at that would be to go back to my presentation, and that presentation showed that about 33% of the students in the colleges are what we are calling non-traditional students, 22 and above. Of that amount, I would say that a certain percent of them will go on and get their baccalaureate degrees through some of the collaborative baccalaureate degree programs that we are offering on our campuses now. The Green Bay program, the Oshkosh program, the Whitewater program, the Milwaukee program. So you're going to get some of those students who are still going to want to complete their degrees, not through this BAAS, but through the Organization Administration program at Oshkosh or the Human Services program at Platteville. And so what would be left, I would think, maybe, let's say somewhere between maybe 250 to 400 students across the campuses that may see this as an option. And it could take those individuals an elongated time to complete the program, because you're looking at people who may take a course here and then 2 courses and then 3 courses. And so that's sort of the way I would back into this, without really knowing all the details. We really have not conducted that level of analysis yet, but we certainly plan to do so.
And I appreciate that. And I would just say it's somewhat of a dilemma as I think about, because we're going to be asked today as to whether it kind of give you a green light or yellow light or red light, without some of those really fundamental questions, and just cost. It's a little hard for me as I'm sitting here saying what my reaction is going to be. Hard to formulate that.
There's one other way of looking at this, however. We do project that the cost would be, I hate to use the word minimal, but we think we have some of the key ingredients in place where we don't have to go and hire new faculty, for example. We certainly would have to reallocate some resources to retool some of the faculty who've been only teaching freshman and sophomore courses. But we're not looking at now having to hire 35 new faculty members in order to do this. And so we have some of those ingredients currently in place where if you were starting out from scratch talking about what we're talking about, I would say the cost would be absolutely enormous.
Thank you.
Regent Crane.
I have 2 questions, and I'll get them both out at once. And in preparation for those questions, I would say that I think the right issues have been identified here, and that we have lots of questions ahead. But my first question is perhaps a little naive, and that is, I'm not sure I understand what the content of this degree is. What is this degree that is? I guess I just need that described more particularly. And then the second question, I think I'm picking up from what Rebecca said earlier. Do you see this proposal as an extension of what the mission of the colleges is at present, or do you see it, and to what degree do you see it as a new direction?
Okay. Let me address the last question first, and then I'm going to ask Provost Lampe to talk a little bit more about perhaps what the content of the degree may be at, once again, a very, very broad level. I would prefer to look at and have you look at what we are proposing as an extension of our mission. Given that we have been serving this population for decades, we've been doing a very good job serving this population. The population now is saying to us, but we still have an unmet need. The employers that are employing this population are saying to us, we have an unmet need, and given your location, we think you can best respond to this need given the ingredients you currently have in place. And so I'm looking at what we are bringing forward as an extension of our mission and not taking the colleges in a completely different direction, if you will, than we have been in the past. This would be an extension of the mission of serving students that we have traditionally served. Greg?
Thank you. I just want to emphasize that what we're proposing is still in the proposal stage, so we don't have a lot of the specifics mapped out in terms of how many credits, what departments would exactly be involved, and so on. But as Chancellor Wilson identified in his presentation, we're really looking at three major areas that we are emphasizing within the degree. First is the critical thinking area, which we tried to identify in the slides. Second is the global perspective piece, which we find is extremely important, particularly in talking with employers in the state and also in the work that the committee did in putting together the recommendation. And third, of course, is the interdisciplinary component combined with the application to real-world problems. That's really an important piece of this application piece, because we want our students to be grounded in taking that knowledge that they're gathering through their 4 years of liberal arts education and then taking it and applying it to outside the university to real-world community-based problems. And I think that's what situates us uniquely to do this, because we are based in communities and we would have the ability to connect with our communities in meaningful ways to deal with real problems that exist in the areas where we're located. So that's the best I can do in terms of conceptualization, because again, we haven't worked out the very bare bones part of the degree, but we have the components very clearly set in terms of where we want to head with the proposal.
Thank you. For all their questions, I now have 3 more questions.
Okay.
I mean, there are so many questions around this, and David and I have had many discussions. So, first I want to say, I think the colleges do a fabulous job, and their mission is very important, and I think we see that with the graduation rates in the 4-year colleges after they transfer. But I guess the question I have is, the colleges have used the 4-year universities to offer degrees on their campuses. We've seen it with Platteville, we've seen it with all kinds. Why does this one have to be different? And even in Colby, there was discussion of a system-wide applied science. Why not system-wide? Why do we have to bring it down to the colleges? And you and I have had that discussion many times, Chancellor, and can you just tell it to me again?
Well, we could actually look at what we are proposing as a system-wide degree, because it will be offered practically all over the state.
But the system would give the degree versus the colleges giving the degree.
Or
the 4-year universities, that collaborative piece that we already have in place, why can that not exist in this model? Why does it have to be separate?
That's a question that President Riley would have to address from the system standpoint. But the system
That'll be next month, Chancellor.
Actually, I think you said you wanted to be silent, speak, Kevin, but that's a question for you there. And what was your second question?
Well, unless it was offered by the 4-year universities, as it has been offered with the rest of the collaborative programs that you do. Is that a possibility versus putting this as a standalone?
We plan to collaborate with our comprehensive institutions, either actually in offering this degree. There may be courses that are being offered by one of the institutions that we think would really fit well for this degree. And so there will be those discussions that would take place with the comprehensive institutions about collaborating and maybe using some of those courses, particularly online courses, that we think may meet the degree requirement. But based on what we've heard in the communities where our campuses are located, and based on the faculty that we have in place on those campuses, we think that, and I would almost hate to say this in front of our faculty, but we think that the state can actually get more leverage out of the faculty that we currently have in place than we are now getting. And as a result of that, we can offer in local communities a degree of enormous quality that could be offered pretty close to a face-to-face format in small group settings. And so given the uniqueness of the degree that we are proposing, and given the faculty that we have in place, and given that these degree recipients are designed to stay in their local communities and contribute to the local economy, we think in this instance that the colleges are strategically prepared and located to do this.
If the
let's just say it was River Falls degree was offered. You would use your own faculty to teach those courses, would you not? I mean, with Platteville, doesn't, Dean Perry, isn't it your faculty who teach those courses?
Our faculty offers a freshman sophomore part of the engineering curriculum in UW Platteville. We are resident and UW class across the junior senior level. So the answer for the junior senior level is no.
Okay.
Platteville.
Okay.
Yeah. And the Platteville program is working very, very well, and we have a dean to support that program, and we're getting new faculty actually to support that. And so for, I think, engineering and science programs that are being delivered, I would certainly say, you know, it makes a lot of sense for us to go to the Platteville model because Chancellor Markey and his faculty and staff have done a great job of actually placing on our campus faculty members who are Platteville's engineering faculty. That's a little bit different than, and I think that model is preferable. What we're talking about now is a model where we currently have the faculty members in place.
Okay. Let me just ask you this other question. I'm sorry. 13,000 students. We've got a majority of them transferring, 18 to 22, transferring to the 4-year. What if they decide they want to stay and get this degree? Do you have space? Are you going to end up not allowing new students, new freshmen, sophomore in because you have too many that want to take this degree on their junior, senior years? I mean, is that an issue?
That is not an issue that at this point we think is prominent in the way that we're thinking about the degree. We think this degree would be less attractive to the high school graduate who's coming to our campus to transfer on to one of the other institutions. And even if we get the numbers that we talked about earlier in terms of individuals staying through the junior and senior year, we do think that we have space on our campuses to accommodate whatever the growth may be.
I'll just wait now because I'm sure other people have the same questions.
Regent Keene, any?
Thank you. As Eileen said, the more we talk, the more questions we have. But first, I would like to thank Ron and David for your presentations today and your PowerPoints. Very good information. And I'm hoping we can share electronically copies of those PowerPoints. It's so much to digest all at once. So if we could get that before our next meeting, I would appreciate it very much. And so with all my questions, how to keep on track. Being someone who's lucky to spend a lot of time near Highway 8, I'm 1 mile south of Highway 8, actually, but I was just north 8 last weekend. I can appreciate the uniqueness of the North Woods of Wisconsin. It's a bit of a different culture, I would say. It just has it's a beautiful feel, actually, a beautiful feel, and the students, learners, adults of the North Woods have needs, definitely underserved in achieving are being able to reach the goal of a baccalaureate degree. As many of you know, in Rhinelander, Wisconsin, Nicolet College has been a force for the last 40 years granting the transfer degree available to the university, and appreciate all the work of President Lerbetsky, who is with us today from Rhinelander. In fact, preparing for today's meeting, I had a good conversation with David about what he was going to be talking about, and also with Adrian, President Lerbetsky, who mentioned to me that UWGB and UWSP have had conversations with Nicolet recently while bringing a 4-year degree to the region. And Kevin, you mentioned the vetting of this possibility. Now, have our 4-year chancellors been involved in that vetting to date, or is this just beginning?
Well, we had a provost chancellor's retreat with the two groups together where they looked at the report, the system report that you're looking at now, and David gave a presentation to them about what he wanted to pursue in it, and then we had some discussion. So to that extent, we've had conversation. Let me emphasize something that I think has kind of gotten on the table already. And by the way, let me say, this, as we go down the line, the Regent saying, well, we have more questions. That's exactly what we hoped. We want to use this session to get those questions out. Let's see, where was I going with this?
Vetting with the chancellor.
Vetting with the chancellors. Yes. Here's the point I want to make. Normally, when a proposal for a new degree of any type comes forward, it comes forward to you having gone through the normal process for the proposal of a new degree. We inserted a previous step to that process. And that step is what we're doing right now, the system report and this discussion, because we believe this was a significant enough, big enough idea that has all sorts of implications and considerations that are outlined in here, that we didn't simply want it to come forward through the normal process as any other degree proposal would. So when and if the colleges were to come forward with an actual degree proposal, that proposal will go through all of the normal vetting process that any degree proposal goes through. After it is fully developed as a degree proposal in the normal process, after David and his colleagues would address all the considerations that have been outlined in the report in front of you. And in that process, as you know, Regent Keene, all of the campuses who are not doing the proposing get a chance to comment on the proposals, as happens with any proposal they come forward with. So, sorry for the long-winded response, but just to keep this sort of process in mind, because I think it goes to a number of the kinds of questions that are coming forward. We have questions, well, they will all be thoroughly addressed if a proposal comes forward from the colleges to do anything like what they're proposing.
Thanks. A few other questions that came to mind. One thing I heard, which I guess I didn't realize, David, you mentioned that your entire degree, freshman, sophomore, is offered online currently?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. So with that, really, it's accessible anywhere.
Yes, it is. We have
I didn't know
UW
that.
colleges online, and that program has grown actually exponentially over the last 2 or 3 years, and it's available any place. So if you want to get your associate degree through the UW colleges, you can go online and do that.
Wow. Now, about how many students would you have in that program now?
We have, in terms of head count, Greg, 1,200.
Isn't that exciting? So, so with that, the first 2 years are pretty well covered as far as being accessible, being offered online, and that's good to know. When we chatted yesterday, we had a really good conversation. I mentioned to David his proposal for the new degree sounded like a page out of the NCAA handbook. You know, it has so many of the pieces that make up a program, a capstone course, and the service learning. So that was very interesting to hear about, and I appreciate that conversation with you. But I also mentioned, which I would mention today, that I would, you know, while I support moving forward and investigating these 2 initiatives, I would take great exception to the extension of offering the UW colleges going north of Highway 8 with a transfer degree when we have had a successful program in place for over 40 years at Nicolet, who has great capacity, I understand from talking to President Lorbetsky, to accept more students, and that Nicolet does also have online capabilities and ITV available in satellite campuses. So I add that caveat to my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent.
Regent Vasquez, I think you had a question.
Yes. Let me revisit one question, please, with one clarification. Did I hear correct that the BAA science degree is really going to be, if it is instituted, would really be a statewide degree? So it's not intended to be limited to only those individuals in northern Wisconsin. So I could be in Janesville, I could be in Racine, I could be in Superior, I could be in Green Bay, and actually be a recipient of this degree. Is that correct?
It would be statewide from the standpoint that it would be offered on 13 campuses.
Okay.
And so given where those campuses are located around the state, one can argue then that this is about as close to a statewide baccalaureate degree as perhaps we will have within the UW system.
Okay. Help me make the connection, because I'm now not sure I understand the connection of place-bound. Would you define place-bound who is the determinant of whether a student is place-bound? Is there a geographic boundary? And let me give you an example. When I was reading the newspapers, obviously not being a member of this body, the Waukesha students were saying it's too far to go to Milwaukee. We don't want to go into the city. Would they have been qualified as place-bound students? And because 20 miles from downtown Waukesha to the UWM campus was excessive travel distance. So what does place-bound mean? And therefore, in this case, the BAA degree is not a place-bound degree, or am I incorrect?
Well, sometimes we actually trip up over the language, and so even within our own institution, we kind of go back and forth in terms of whether we talk about the student as place-bound or non-traditional or what, and what does that mean. But in terms of the way we are looking at the audience here, it would be those students, many of whom are working 30-plus hours a week, many of them full-time. They have families. They basically want an opportunity to complete a degree beyond what they currently have. They are making a limited income, and although one of our campuses may be 50 miles away, given all of their day-to-day responsibilities and the cost of gasoline, they can't afford to even get in their car and drive 50 miles one way 3 or 4 times a week to try and complete a degree. The cost of that is absolutely prohibitive for a family that is living barely above the poverty line and is trying to get him or herself out of poverty. And so our degree would certainly target those individuals who, even in their own way of thinking about this, don't have many options available for participating in the baccalaureate degree pipeline if they don't want to quit their job and if they don't have the money to pay for gasoline to travel what may be 50 miles one way 3 or 4 times a week.
Regent Vasquez, if I could just add, I think what David is outlining for you is the concept at this point from the UW College's perspective. We're going to need to do a lot more work to demonstrate need and really understand more fully where that need exists, where that need is being met by our current programs or could be met by current programs, and where there is a gap that could be filled by a UW College's degree. And that's all work that is ahead of us.
One more. Jose. Would you please define and help me understand why the usage of the term applied degree when, as I heard you talk, you were non-specific about applied in or applied whatever. I have an Associate of Arts in Science. Why not simply just call it an Associate of Arts or a Bachelor's in Arts or Bachelor's in Science? Why does this one have to have the applied term to it? And is such a degree available, obviously not in Wisconsin, but are there other states that have such a degree? And how do they use that term applied at the baccalaureate degree level?
Well, let me say what this degree is not. In using the word applied, it's not a bachelor's degree in a vocational field, and it's not a bachelor's degree in a technical field. The applied aspect of this is intended to close the nexus between liberal arts skills, if you will, and the application of those skills to real-world situations through service learning opportunities, through the capstone experience, through placing students in internship possibilities, to really take what is being gained in the classroom in terms of critical thinking skills, in terms of global understandings, in terms of communication skills, and put our students in positions where they are able to apply directly what they are learning in the classroom to real-world situations. And that is the applied aspect of this. If you were to look at the way traditionally we have thought about the liberal arts in particular, we use words like soft skills when we talk about the liberal arts foundation, and I think many of our faculty, and I do too, I take exception to that. Yeah, I think a liberal arts foundation is a foundation built upon, quote unquote, the hardest skills that you could actually have in this world. And so this is a way of looking at those concepts that comprise the foundation of a liberal arts education, and then putting students in a position where they can actually apply now what they are learning in the classroom to real-world situations.
In fact, we do have two programs in our system, relatively new programs that are titled Bachelor of Applied Studies, one at UW Green Bay, another at UW Oshkosh, that were specifically designed to be degree completion programs for students with the associate's degree from one of our technical colleges. So that we do have that title out there in our system.
Thank you.
And we have looked at other states, and we'll be in a position to come forward with examples where this is being done in 3 or 4 more states as well.
All right, we'll come up this side of the Regents table. Regent Walsh.
I'm beginning to feel a little insecure about my education. I've been insulted all morning. I have an accounting degree, and then I also went to plumbing school. I'm a lawyer. That's what my mother says. I kind of look at this from 30,000 feet, and so bear with me. To me, one of the challenges this board has is to increase access to education to the people of Wisconsin. I look at it as a huge challenge and obligation. And I'm speaking of access for people that are non-traditional, working, veterans, place-bound, the type of student that needs to be encouraged. And I believe in that not only as an obligation to the whole state of Wisconsin, I'm a little political because I think we need their votes too, but also because we all know the statistics that the higher the per capita income, the greater the percentage of baccalaureate degree holders, the higher the per capita income, the higher the taxes, and we get some gas for the engine. And so I look at this as just another good creative example of something for us to think about. And with that background, which I'm kind of professing that I'm for stuff like this, David, I'd ask you, tell me one reason economically and one reason politically why this isn't a very good idea. Why it isn't a very good idea.
Oh, okay.
This is like cross-examining your own witness.
I'm standing here speechless.
I'm sorry?
I said I'm speechless because you said actually give you one good reason why economically this is not a good idea.
Yes.
It's very hard for me to think of one reason economically why this is not a good idea. Primarily, Regent Walsh, because of the statistic that you just put on the table. For a person with a high school diploma, the average annual salary is about $25,000 per year. For a person with a baccalaureate degree, it's about $45,000 a year. And so from an economic standpoint, the individuals that we're targeting who actually aspire to get this degree could then have a higher annual income. And if they have a higher annual income, they're going to pay more taxes. And if they pay more taxes, then we have more resources to do the things that we need to do within the UW system. So this is a win-win-win from an economic development standpoint.
Now, I got to tell you, the answer is non-responsive.
That's what I started out by saying. I was speechless.
I was asking you from, and I gave you the background because I am for any of these. I believe in these kinds of thought, thinking out of the box, and I like it, and I know it's going to be vetted and vetted and vetted. But I need to also know at the same time why not. And can you give me a political reason? Is there a parochialism here? Is there some tension with the tech college system and the comprehensive system? I just want you to tell us give us the landscape.
I think if the message is sent around the state that what we are trying to do here is to develop 26 four-year campuses, that's not the right political message that people want to send. And so that's why I was real careful in the presentation to point out that what we are not seeking is to turn our two-year campuses into four-year comprehensive institutions. And so politically, that would be perhaps one of the things that we would need to make sure that we communicate to our state very, very clearly. From an economic development standpoint, if we were also talking about going back to our local counties and asking those local county boards to invest then more heavily in the institutions, then I think some of those county boards may actually say, well, we may have to rethink this relationship that we have with you, which is why along the way we've been real careful to have conversations with our county executives to see if the local counties are on board in terms of this concept before bringing it forward. But one economic downside could be that if the local county boards feel that moving in this direction would mean that those local counties would have to invest more in the campuses than they are currently investing, then we may get some pushback there.
One last comment.
Is that more responsive?
Yes, that is. That was good, because those are the negatives. If we do it, you do it wrong. And I hear that. The other thing I wanted to mention is that, this is all part of the same thing that started the covenant. And the covenant, I think, is going to be, when we look back years from now, one of the great initiatives, and these kinds of initiatives are consistent with it. But we do have to watch out for what's wrong with it at the same time.
Thank you.
Regent Shields.
All right. As a alumni of the colleges, I guess I feel very appropriate to speak. First of all, I have to say I was in the third that could not get into anywhere else in the UW. So I wanted to just point that out. I did graduate in '04, and it has given me the tools necessary for, and I want to thank Dean Perry and whatnot for the opportunities and whatnot. But this is still something that I hear from non-trads, hey, I really want to get that degree, but, I've got a family, I've got all these everything else going on in the world. I can't up and move to Platteville or Parkside, and and we've seen the Platteville initiative and all that come through. What's really interesting is when I hear a student from Fond du Lac coming up to Oshkosh who has an associate's degree, who sits next to me in my kinesiology class, and yet a lot of his credits didn't transfer. Probably most likely because his time that he started was, I think, in the late 90s. So because he's going part-time, he takes a lot slower to get his degree. So he has to drive, he works in Fond du Lac, and then he has to drive up to Oshkosh for classes at night, and then, repeat, rinse, recycle, repeat, right? Now, I also grew up in Iron Mountain, Michigan, which is right across the river from Florence up there. And it's really interesting in the North Woods. When I was growing up, I spent from 1st grade to 11th grade up there in probably one of the best high schools in Michigan, Iron Mountain High. What was very interesting about that area was that you graduated high school and you either made two decisions. You either went to college somewhere downstate, because, we're in Michigan, so we really don't pay attention to this side of even though we got all of our news from Green Bay. We went downstate. I ended up getting my 0.01 or 001. It's either that or you find a job. And then you usually get stuck in that job. I've seen this happen a lot, even within my own family and with other people from that area. So looking at it, just even seeing Florence up there, I was like, wow, we could really, I know that the local community college up there is now starting to move into that area. Iron Mountain, Kingsford area is, I believe, the second or the third largest area in the UP. So, and that's just looking at this little corner of that 8. If you look at that border area all the way across, I think there's huge room for growth there. This is exactly what what I've been looking at too. Is the non-trans are the growth that is necessary for the system, and I fully back this initiative, and I would hope others do too. I do have questions as well, but again, this is very preliminary, so I think it's innovative. I think it's good, and I'm very excited about it. So, thank you.
Regent Thomas.
I agree. It's very interesting. Nice to have this discussion about this. As someone pursuing a bachelor's degree right now and starting to think about prospects after school, I'm starting to think about how to market the degree that I'm getting. And a lot of that happens through the context of my major and the classes that I've taken in that context. I think, at least for me, talking about what a liberal arts degree has given me is important, but the things that I've learned, the content that I've learned within my major is probably what I'll use to get my first job. And that could be different for a variety of different people in different job markets. And so I have a few questions, and maybe they're all sort of on the same line. What sort of jobs would this degree prepare people for? And what sort of job markets are there available in these places where these people are bound to that this degree would allow them to grow?
Okay. We are still, of course, in conversations with employers, but this degree is designed with a lot of employer feedback in mind. So let's take a hospital in Marinette, for example, that we have received a letter from the CEO basically saying, I have X number of people here in my hospital who are wanting this degree, adult placed-bound students, and they don't have the opportunity to complete a degree like this. And so if this opportunity were available to them, they would immediately then be in a position where they could move into a supervisory role, move into a management role, perhaps even increase their salaries. And so the degree is not being designed with a national market and a whole lot of fluidity to it in terms of moving from Wisconsin to X state now to go into a graduate program. Although we think that if individuals get the degree that we're talking about, that there certainly would be a skill set there to enable them to go into a graduate program and get a master's degree through some of the programs that our comprehensives are coming online with now in human services and education and some of those other fields.
So the degree that, say, this content that might replace a major, the typical idea of a major, would be somewhat guided by local businesses or by the job market in these places.
That's the way we're looking at the degree right now, yes.
Thinking about this, and I'm not an expert on this, but it sounds like a really useful tool for students. In the context of us giving liberal arts degrees, I wonder whether having businesses contribute to the design of these degrees follows in the mission of a typical liberal arts degree. But I'm certain that I'm not the person to answer that one. We can go further with that, so maybe someone else can.
Well, we're certainly in the work that we're doing on the LEAP initiative, the Liberal Education Initiative, listening very carefully to what we're hearing from employers and others across the nation. A lot of the work underscoring that has told us the importance of the liberal arts, kind of confirming the way that we've been approaching these things for a long time.
And this degree would fall in line with?
I think that this degree does. I think the things that were mentioned as critical components, the critical thinking, the global perspective, the capstone course, those are all elements of that liberal arts initiative.
Thank you.
Regent Davis.
I want to say first and foremost that I'm really excited about this, what do you want to call it, this fluid process that we're using to get input from the board. As chair of Education Committee, this is just absolutely wonderful to have the level of conversation, the level of, inquiry and so on and so forth from the board before anything ever gets vetted through the process and ultimately ends up in education before it comes to you. And so hats off to you, Kevin, Rebecca. David is courageous to, be the guinea pig for this, so I really commend you. Fabulous job, I'd say, in terms of the presentation, being able to respond. And I do love David Walsh's question of, so what's wrong with this picture? Because I do think we need to talk about all aspects that we may be concerned about and so on and so forth. So I think this is quite healthy. So I wanted to say that. I also very much support our encouraging our chancellors to act and think out of the box within a context. So I'm very glad that we are pursuing I'm hoping that we're of a mind that the planning and the continuation of looking into these proposals as an option and moving them forward is something that we would be encouraging. And I think I heard several of my colleagues say that, and I absolutely feel we should encourage that going forward. So that's my comment on both process and looking forward to more, if you will, in terms of detail around both of the initiatives. The question I have for you, Kevin, is David mentioned in, I forget, component 1, 2, or 3, the credit for prior learning concept. And I thought I heard you talk about that. Maybe it was in the meeting that I was here by phone for. Could you elaborate on your thinking around credit for prior learning?
Sure.
What it is versus what it ain't?
A little bit, yes. And, this was one component that I suggested we ought to look at under one of the 10 action steps, which was developing new pathways degrees in the system. And Rebecca's already mentioned that Oshkosh and Green Bay have been out in front with their Bachelor of Applied Studies, building on the technical college curriculum in their area. That's a new pathways degree, and there are others that are out there that we could enumerate. And I think part of that is we build out those new pathways degrees, mainly aimed at working adult students, many of whom are place-bound around the state. We ought to consider how we go about meeting those students where they are, many of whom, especially if they are working adults, come to us with some real knowledge based on the learning they've done in their employment situation. We don't have, in my estimation now, a robust, vetted, clear enough way to look at what they bring that faculty across the system have looked at and are comfortable with to say, all right, we are willing to do this and grant credit based not on the fact that you worked as an accountant, but on a way we have developed to help you demonstrate what accounting knowledge you got in the course of working as an accountant. So that is one of the things that the provosts, in consultation with Senior Vice President Martin, have begun to look at. And I think over the course of time, if we're really going to be serious about doing a better job with working adult students, we are going to have a system to do that. It makes no sense educationally to force that student, if they can demonstrate that they have mastered the knowledge that Accounting 1 teaches, back into Accounting 1 for a semester, forcing him or her to be bored and to pay tuition for that course. If he or she can demonstrate he's mastered the knowledge in Accounting 1, he or she ought to go right into Accounting 2 if they want to get a degree in accounting or a general degree that they can put some of that credit toward. So I think we'll be working on that as part of one of the action steps we vetted with you last week.
Thank you.
Regent Burmaster.
I feel somewhat rude with my back to you, but if it's all right, I'm going to face this way. Is it anticipated? So I agree with Regent Davis. I'm so glad we're having this healthy discussion. Is it anticipated then that the Bachelor of Applied Arts and Sciences would be at a lower tuition than bachelor degrees? I know we have differential tuitions, but I mean, is it going to be cheaper to get this degree?
Then what?
Than in our current system. Than getting a bachelor's degree at the lowest tuition of any of our comprehensives.
We are currently having a discussion like that as we begin to look at developing the proposal more comprehensively. And our preliminary thinking is that if students enroll in the junior and senior level courses toward the baccalaureate degree, that we might price this differently. That, in essence, the access mission on the part of the colleges for the transfer mission would hopefully have a lower tuition because that's our primary mission. But certainly, Steve Wildeck and I have begun some preliminary discussions about how we would actually price the baccalaureate degree, and our thinking is that that degree should be priced in line with perhaps what those students would pay at the comprehensive institutions. Now, primarily because in the case of the comprehensive institutions bringing those collaborative baccalaureate degrees to our campuses now, these students are paying UW-Milwaukee's tuition or UW-Oshkosh's tuition when Oshkosh brings that baccalaureate degree completion program to our campuses, and we may follow the same kind of lead there.
Is UW Superior at capacity? Julius isn't here. That's not at capacity. Right. Is Nicolay at capacity?
No. I just asked Adrian yesterday. They have plenty of room.
Parkside's not at capacity, right?
Parkside's not at capacity, right?
Not at capacity.
Yeah, you can start more space.
We have some.
Okay. I guess that I have the same concerns and questions that I've heard all the other regents. And to answer Regent Walsh's question of, what would be a concern economically, I'm really concerned about, with the rising cost of tuition, if our UW colleges are going to be offered, we've frozen tuition there, so we're more in line. And if we're going to say that conceivably you can get this degree that we are going to be duplicating and and competing, creating competition. That was one of the things that was a consideration. We have to look at the entire system. And what, even though not all, some of us just sit on the Board of Regents, several of us now sit on also the Technical College System Board. And the Technical College System relies on general education courses, I think. This is more of a question to the president of the system and to some of the presidents here, on those general education courses being able to support the technical mission. Is that correct? I mean, at least that's the way I always saw the economy of the tech system. And I can see that we might be we have to increase skilled individuals in our state. But it is more about the knowledge and the skill, I believe, when you really talk to the employers. And we have to ensure what's happening in the K-12 system, and one of the major focuses of high school reform is all based off of Carl Perkins. I mean, there's going to be a transformation, we hope, in high school reform where there's an identification already at the national level, through federal law of 16 career clusters that are all about what you're talking about with your applied degree, which is it isn't any good anymore that you just know something. You have to be able to do something with it in the real world. Well, that's what Carl Perkins, and that's all been done on the national level. And then, And I just don't know that we're making what's going to maybe be transforming in the K-12 fit with this seamlessness. And it's hard. I don't know the answers either. But I'd say there's an economic and a political argument to really take our time here. Because I came in with an awful lot of questions, and now I have a lot of questions about how this would actually work, and why wouldn't we take, if we want to serve northern Wisconsin, why wouldn't we take Nicolet and Superior and put this degree there, you know, and try to build up those campuses and increase online opportunities at those institutions for more place-bound. Or what's going on, when you look at the map, I've got the map of all three, the colleges, the tech. I mean, what about Wisconsin Indian had tech too? I mean, does that serve Ashland? That's in the same CISA for us.
Quite a few satellites. I
Yeah.
believe it's, didn't they tell?
But I mean, to me, we have to look at the system of all higher ed opportunities. If you want to do it regionally, you want to say, and boy, do we ever need to serve northern Wisconsin. Yes. That, you know, the committee's right on with that. But how we do it, I would wish that we would really look at it from a statewide perspective. And a PK-16 collaborative, and not do anything that would set up, and it wouldn't be intentional, I know. None of us would intentionally want to be setting up a system that would be a competitive model where years from now we would see that we had killed the technical college system, one of the best technical college systems in the country, because of choices that young people make because of we're returning adults. We can't always control that. We might be knowing what they're saying now, but you know, if I'm in a 2-year college and it's going to be cheaper and easier to stay for that might, I'm worried about how that's going to impact the comprehensives as well. I don't know. You can see I'm very concerned about this. I think it's a very good thing that we're talking about this.
Regent Bartel.
Regent Walsh used a legal description of how to ask his questions. I would use another legal description. I think that what we've heard and what we've seen from the report establishes probable cause to move forward. I don't think that we've reached the point of making a decision beyond a reasonable doubt at this point. But I am, frankly, very excited about these proposals. I think they are entirely consistent with the growth agenda, which I think is our primary concern. I was interested to hear Chancellor Wilson describe this as an extension of the mission rather than a different or a changed mission. Sometimes that's referred to pejoratively as mission creep. But I think mission creep happens everywhere, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think you always have to be looking at your mission and what kinds of extensions are appropriate and would be beneficial to those who are the constituents of your mission. I can't imagine that we wouldn't give a green light to moving forward to address the considerations that Libby raised and others have raised about the political and economic impacts of this proposal, as well as what alternatives would be available. I'm not committed to it certainly at this point, but I do think that we ought to look more carefully, and Senior Vice President Martin and Chancellor Wilson ought to, and their people ought to put it together in more detail so that we can address it. I do have 2 questions. One is probably very easy. I think I saw on the slide, Chancellor Wilson, that you said that this degree that we're talking about is not going to be an upside-down degree. What does that mean?
I asked for that. An upside down degree is that's kind of that's an inside baseball term for you start out perhaps at a technical college, you get 2 years of technical training, then you come to a university and get your general education, your liberal arts piece. And so instead of starting with the general education as you would a regular comprehensive program and then moving to the major, you do your focused work first. That's why it's upside down.
Upside down or backwards?
Major first.
Think of a triangle that starts narrowly at the bottom and then spreads up the top rather than...
It's an upside-down pyramid. Okay. All right. Now I got it. The other question is a little more substantive. I'm curious as to the extent to which these two proposals, the baccalaureate degree and the Northern Wisconsin initiative, are connected. For example, would we want to move forward with the Northern Wisconsin initiative if we weren't offering the BAAS degree? What are the factors in that decision?
I'm actually having discussions with the president of Nicolet, and we will begin to talk about how best to move forward to respond to the needs in the 6 or 7 areas that I addressed in my presentation. And it's really, really premature at this point to say that we are interested, we meaning the colleges, are interested in going into that area and offering degree opportunities if those degree opportunities are currently being offered. And so in response to Regent Burmaster, that is indeed not our desire to duplicate, as I said in the presentation, any degrees that are currently offered in the system or the way those degrees are offered in the population areas that we would like to address. If, for example, we were to come forward with a proposal, and if we get the sense that we can go forward now and begin to develop that proposal, and if the board then, in the end, were to approve this proposal, we certainly could see a great nexus between the BAAS and Northern Wisconsin in terms of what I would consider to be a great collaboration. It could be, once again, looking at the population that we're talking about. If then, in the case of Nicolet, if they are providing that population with the associate degree, this is the population that may not be going on to Julius's UW Superior, but they're still in, maybe 200 miles away from that campus. And if we then could join with a Nicolet to then bring that BAAS degree to that population, and that's a win-win. It's a win for the state, it's a win for the UW, it's a win for Nicolet, it's a win for everybody. Because we would then be still in line with the growth agenda goals. We will be serving a population that is not currently being served. We would not be duplicating resources, and Nicolet could offer that population the degree, and we can come in and offer that population that is not getting this degree in any other fashion the junior and senior level courses. So there are so many possibilities here as we move on, and I'm really anxious to commence this dialogue and conversation with our various partners to see how we could actually make this happen in a way that will benefit all concerned.
I could certainly see the relationship between the degree and the Northern Wisconsin initiative. What I'm asking is, if we were not to move forward with the degree, would you still want to move forward with the Northern Wisconsin initiative?
We would want to continue to explore how we could actually work in collaboration with others in Northern Wisconsin to better serve the population that is not currently being served. Yes. Yes.
Regent Spector.
You're still awake. Well, it is an advantage to be the last one. Or, I'm sorry, Chuck. The second last
You
one.
may or may not.
I've learned 3 things listening so far. One is you can go a long way in this state of education with a choral and fine arts background. Second, I didn't know Carl
Those
Perkins.
soft skills.
I didn't know Carl Perkins had given up country music.
I'm so sick of that joke.
And three, some guys just can't get over being lawyers. My comments, very briefly, are I am absolutely convinced that what is being proposed as a goal of this, the access, the opening education to groups that haven't been as well represented, and is absolutely great. And whatever we can do to make that happen should, to use the lawyer's phrase, have a great presumption of validity. It absolutely should. And I think the questions that have been asked, the more micro questions, are all very good, and I can't add anything. I am concerned to pursue what Libby and Jeff and David a little bit said about what I've now seen over the last 3 years as to how this particular decision raises a bigger issue for me. And while mission creep it shouldn't be a pejorative, it is very real. The technical colleges want to do more. We've seen that during the course of this year, and they will want to do more. Why wouldn't they? It's human nature. Just the way our law firm wanted to expand to another city. Or you always think you can do a better job of continuing to expand what you already do well. I think that's, in the same way, that's true with this colleges thing. Let's do something more. It's true of the comprehensives that we've seen in the Education Committee, and that isn't going to cease.
That's right.
It isn't going to cease. Yet the amount of resources we have, the public support we have, is plateauing, it appears, to a certain extent, in certain situations. When I worked with Don on the UW-Waukesha thing, and the question of the, what was it called, Don, the center, University Center concept, the idea that Waukesha Technical College was really adjacent almost to UW-Waukesha and the potentials for that. My thought of all this is, to go beyond what Libby said, to be more blunt, I think it really is time for the people of the state to think about the structure of all of this. I mean, if we do this, we're going to have degrees from the technical colleges, ultimately, that will be bachelor's degrees and bachelor's degree of applied arts and the comprehensives and the doctoral schools. And how do we decide among these scarce resources really what we should do? And we do it in an ad hoc and, I think, very sensible way. We work it out. Or it's tense sometimes, but we work it through. But there's got to be a better way to do this. I don't know what other states do. I don't know. Our history, obviously, is a part of it. We don't want to give up what is so important to us about colleges, for example, and their connection to the areas they're in and their relationships with the county boards. But these are big issues. And this seems small, but it's indicative of bigger issues, of where are we going with these schools. And it's an opportune time, I think, that the leaders of the elected leaders of the state, as well as us, look at this question.
Let me go to Regent Pruitt and then Regent Rosenblatt.
Thank you. I figured out that sitting in this position, being the last of 15, is a little bit like being at the end of the buffet line. By the time you get there, the chicken and the mashed potatoes are gone, and all that's left is the Brussels sprouts. So rather than ask a question about Brussels sprouts, I was sort of interested in a little bit bigger picture question about this entire document, really. I mean, I think it relates to the whole conversation topic, so I don't think it's off point of the larger role of the UW colleges in the system. And we're focused really on 2 of the 5, proposals that are part of this document. And I don't want to take us into an in-depth discussion, but I would be just curious as to what some of the committee conversation was, and where, Kevin, from your perspective, and David and others, that the conversation exists on these other 3 topics. And in particular, I mean, the UW colleges are extraordinary institutions, and I think the Chancellor indicated in his presentation the fact that the work that they are doing in preparing first and second year students to go on and complete their education, the 84% graduation rate, the fact that that it's the highest of any. And in particular, I guess specifically, I'm interested in recommendation number 5. Because the issue of forming a closer relationship with UW-Milwaukee and MPS to enhance access for students in Milwaukee. I mean, this has been a centerpiece, and I know Carlos has talked about it, our meetings in Milwaukee, about the challenges that exist in preparing first and second year students to get through, to retain those students and get degrees. And I'm sort of particularly interested in the status of that conversation, and noted a little bit in this brief presentation that it seems as if the focus may be narrowing in that conversation. It says at this point the focus of the task force has been serving the needs of adult students. I guess I'm curious how and why the narrowing has occurred, and how we sort of regard the state of that conversation today and going forward.
Just a word, Regent Pruitt, about how we got to these 5 considerations in this report, and I'll turn it over to Chancellor Wilson and Chancellor Santiago if he wants to comment on the Milwaukee recommendation. Keep in mind that as I think both Ron and David indicated, David had a number of task forces in the colleges running that were doing work prior to when we put the system group together. So in this instance, the system group really took 5 ideas that had come out of the work that David and his colleagues in the colleges had done and said, all right, before we bring it to the regents, let's look at what the considerations would be were we to move forward with any of the options that were coming out of the colleges. And that led to the production of this document. In the meantime, David and others continued to talk about some of the ideas that are represented that had come out of his commission, and that resulted in some winnowing and sifting. So let me, with that preface, turn to David and or Carlos to talk about how that happened, that winnowing and sifting in the case of recommendation number 5.
Thank you, David. The conversation began truly when Chancellor Wilson approached me and said, can we help in terms of your access mission? And I welcomed his support. UWM now does, as you know, a lot of remediation. Students coming from the Milwaukee area, K through 12, will go to the institution. And we're proud of both the pre-college programs and the remediation efforts that go on campus. And we think these are important components of the success of students going through K through 12. We also have a very important program, the Panther Tracks and Connections program with the Milwaukee Area Technical College, where you can come to UWM. You can be admitted as a UWM student, but if you have some academic deficiencies, we encourage the students to go to MATC to have those academic deficiencies dealt with and then come to the main campus. And we started it last year, and we've had a good cohort going through. So we think with those 2 programs, we have captured at least a part of the population that needs to go on to college and needs some significant, I'll call it remediation, but it's really sort of a pre-college experience. What Chancellor Wilson indicated was that perhaps we're missing a number of students, and these are largely the adult learners, that are not going through that route. And what I indicated is we would be happy to explore that potential, because I think we want to ensure that everyone have a particular avenue and vehicle to get a 4-year degree. And we think there are multiple ways for students to get into the system, and our connection with MATC is one we value. Our own support system is another one we value, but we would not rule out a cooperative arrangement with the 2-year campus to meet a need if it's not being met.
As Chancellor Santiago indicated, back to your point as well, Regent Burmaster, it is not our intent to try to duplicate anything that is currently going on in the state that is working well. And based on the conversations we had with Chancellor Santiago, it appears as if the relationship that UWM has with the MATC is working well. And so in that connection, why should we expend parsimonious resources to basically try and duplicate something that ostensibly is working well? And so those conversations then led to, well, are there other opportunities that we can collaborate? And so that's where, when we looked at the same thing in Milwaukee that we see across the state in terms of the number of individuals with baccalaureate degrees, the city of Milwaukee is in a huge deficit, about only 19%, and then many of the adults in the city of Milwaukee also are in the same situation where they are not participating in the baccalaureate degree pipeline. And so the discussions that are taking place right now are discussions centered around this adult population that may be underserved in the city of Milwaukee, and how we could possibly work together then to serve that population and bring that population into a pipeline that would enable it to go on to UWM and get its baccalaureate degree. I've also had very productive conversations with Darnell Cole at MATC, and we plan to continue to explore those conversations. I think we are on the same page. There's no fierce competition taking place here. As a matter of fact, given the needs in Milwaukee, I think we all need to get up to the plate and partake of the food, and we need to do that in unison. And so that's the direction that we want to move in, and I certainly am very, very pleased with the discussions that Darnell and I have had, and we plan to go forward and build on those to see what the potential collaborations in Milwaukee may actually be for us.
Regent, excuse me, just speaking of food, as Chancellor Wilson just did, unless you don't want to have lunch, in fairness to our financial aid and tuition discussion, we're going to have to wrap this up. But do you have one last thing?
I had a process question, so
Great.
if I could. I've really been impressed with the questions also, and the conversation. It has been so helpful. And I want to particularly thank Mark, who got left out of the discussion, the president, for allowing us to have the time and the in-depth discussion. I guess I would ask you, President Riley, you had mentioned that this process would proceed and that you would come back to us perhaps with some options in April. And I'm a little bit nervous about that for two reasons. And one of them is the diversity of questions and the complexity of questions that have been raised here today. And also the fact that we focused primarily on the issue of the additional enhanced opportunity for baccalaureate degrees in the place-bound student, the adult student. We didn't really vet, because people were really engrossed in that conversation, the northern portion of that discussion. And I think that as I'm listening to it, we are at a pivotal time. This could be a very cooperative opportunity for us to build collaboration with all of those institutions that Regent Spector talked about. Or it could become a silo. And I think that it's important for us now to take this opportunity to kind of explore with our partners how this would happen and where we could be cooperative. And this also goes to David's question about the politics. If it is perceived by the legislature or the public as adding a layer of redundancy where you haven't explored all of those many opportunities for collaboration, to come up with a model that truly does take into consideration all of our resources, then I think we may have a bit of trouble on our hands. So I would say, Regent Bartel, you said green light. I'd say yellow light. Proceed with caution and take a little bit more time to vet your various questions.
Yes, Bruce. Chancellor Shepard.
You mentioned we would increase our salaries if we didn't. All of us just like our opinion.
Good. Can I make a comment? Then I know we do need to wrap up. I think what we got to keep our eyes on the prize here. The litmus test is, will whatever gets proposed contribute to the growth agenda? And I think underneath that litmus test question is a student question. Whatever would come forward, is there a need that students have that regardless, it's a hard thing to say, but regardless of the needs of our institutions as institutions, that can't be the primary focus. Primary focus needs to be what's the need of the students and which institution or combination of institutions working together are best suited to meet those needs once we're convinced that there is unmet need. And I think, in my mind, that's the umbrella for all of these conversations. And I'm just going back to, in a way, the most recent example we've had of this and the most recent similar kind of conversation we had about this was really the Chippewa Valley Tech proposal, which came forward initially as a proposal from Chippewa Valley Tech to offer a liberal arts transfer degree by itself. And in the course of those conversations, we wound up with what I think is a collaborative model. If we hadn't let Chippewa Valley Tech come forward with their proposal in some detail, so Chancellor Shepard and Chancellor, whoever wants to comment, and the heads of the tech colleges, we wouldn't have had the kind of dialogue around that one that wound up with what I think was a sensible result for the students and a sensible result, as a matter of fact, in that instance, for the institutions involved. So I would hope we could kind of treat this idea in the same way we treated that one.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's great. You know, I was just wondering, too, is there any way we could get an inventory of, say, since the work of Kobe or even before, just a listing of all these great collaborations that really do exist? I mean, we just celebrated the engineering, you know, the Stout and Green Bay. Is there an inventory of those that somebody could come up with? I think that would be really good to see, so everybody can see how, when you, just what you said, when you work in collaboration, what you really can accomplish.
I think that's a great idea, and I think even if we weren't discussing the college's notions this morning, I think we need now a document electronically and on paper that shows those collaborations, because we have so many of them. What I consistently find is, when I talk about them with audiences outside the university, they say, "What? You're doing that?" They don't know how we have tried to step up together to